Welcome to another edition of Discovering the Book of Mormon through Science and Exploration. Joseph Smith, the translator of the Book of Mormon, was born to a poor farm family in the backwoods of New York. He had only the equivalency of a third-grade education. He translated the Book of Mormon in 1829. What could he have known about the construction of ancient Mesopotamian ships from the 3rd millennium BC? Absolutely nothing. For that matter, no one alive at the time of Joseph Smith knew how these boats were constructed. It's only been in recent years that maritime archaeologists have found the remains of ancient Mesopotamian type vessels. Yet, the Book of Mormon provides a detailed record of how the Mesopotamian ships were built. The account of the Jaredites tells us that soon after the Tower of Babel, the Jaredites fled Mesopotamia and built ships and sailed to the New World. The Jaredites were shipbuilders, and the Lord commanded that they build ships after the same basic design that they had built them before. And the Lord said, "Go to work and build after the manner of barges which ye have hitherto built." From this verse, we know that the Jaredites knew what a Mesopotamian barge looked like, for they had built them before. The Mesopotamians invented the sail and built large river ships that were called barges. The hulls of their barges were constructed from bundles of reeds. At times, their ships had decks and cabins. The river barges the Jaredites would have built would have been powered by sails and oars. However, once the Mesopotamian ships left the calm waters of the Euphrates River and entered the stormy waters of the Indian Oceans, their ships were modified to withstand the forces incurred while navigating high seas. One of these modifications were enclosed hulls so that their cargoes would not be swept overboard. We know also that the Lord inspired the Jaredites to make changes in their ships so to be strong enough to reach the Promised Land. In the Maritime Museum in Salalah, Oman, is a model of a Mesopotamian ocean-going ship that was reconstructed from the remains of a ship that sailed in the Persian Gulf around 2500 BC, roughly the time of the Jaredites. Here is a description of the vessel as noted in the museum. Quote, "This is a hypothetical reconstruction of a trading vessel from the mid-3rd millennium BC, which was based on iconography and direct evidence recovered at Ras Al Jins in eastern Oman. The vessel comprised of reed bundles lashed together, with reed matting quilted onto the reed-built hull. The vessel was then coated inside and out with bitumen, and outside smeared with mud. The port side of the model shows the 4 layers that comprise the hull. Some wooden elements such as beams, steering gear supports, and quarter rudders, as well as bipod mast and yard, also are featured in the construction." End quote. From the words of the Book of Mormon, it is clear that the Jaredites had built similar ships before they built their 8 barges that took them and their friends to the Promised Land. Let's read from the Book of Ether. "They were small, and they were light upon the water, even like unto the likeness of a fowl upon water. Boats made of reed bundles rest light upon the water, like a bird floating. Ships built with wood rest deep in the water, and require deep water ports. They were excellently tight. The reed bundles on the Mesopotamian ocean-going ships were layered with matted panels and coated inside and out with bitumen or pitch, a petroleum substance that is naturally found in Mesopotamia. Noah used the same substance to seal the ark, both inside and out. They would hold water like unto a dish. What did a dish look like in the 3rd millennium BC? It was made of dried clay. And why does clay or mud earthenware hold water? Because when the clay dries, the salt inside the earth binds the clay together so it becomes waterproof. When the Mesopotamians smeared mud over their reed ships, they added an additional layer of waterproofing and made their ships look like a giant dish. The bottom thereof was tight like unto a dish, and the sides thereof were tight like unto a dish. Once the hull was completely covered with mud, it must have looked like a giant earthenware dish resting on the water. The ends thereof were peaked. As you can see in the model, the Mesopotamian ships were peaked at both ends. The top thereof was tight like unto a dish. The top of a ship is its cabin that rests on the deck of the hull. The Jaredite ships would have had cabins for the passengers, and they would have also been completely covered with waterproof mud. The length thereof was the length of a tree. Again, as you can see in the model, the length of the small ships was roughly the length of a tree. And the door thereof, when it was shut, was tight like unto a dish. Even the door of the cabin was covered with bitumen and mud to prevent water from entering the cabin. In them there is no light. Whither shall we steer? This is a very important clue. It tells us that the Jaredites needed light in order to steer their ships. To steer a ship, one needs a means of propulsion, that is, to move the ship forward. You cannot steer a barge that is simply floating in the water. Remember, the Mesopotamians had invented the sail and used rudders to steer their ships. The Mesopotamians needed at least one sail for their ocean-going vessels in order to steer them. So why did the Jaredites need light in order to sail? The answer is simple. There were 8 barges. They needed a beam or lights in order to see each other at night as they were sailing. Without a means of locating each other, they would have become separated within a few hours in the dark of the night. Light so they could see each other, and sails and rudders so that they could steer and stay in formation. Without such means, the Jaredite barges would have become separated within a few short hours. We know that all the Jaredite barges arrived together in the Promised Land. That required sails and a source of light. The fact that the Jaredite ships had sails is confirmed in the account of their voyage. And it came to pass that the wind never ceased to blow towards the Promised Land, while they were upon the waters, and thus they were driven forth before the wind. Ask any seasoned sailor what sailing before the wind means. Joseph Smith would not have been familiar with that term. Sailing before the wind is a nautical terminology used when the wind is blowing in the same direction as your destination. We shall perish, for in them we cannot breathe, save it is the air which is in them. Therefore we shall perish. Being totally encased in bitumen and mud, the Jaredites needed a way to receive fresh air. And the Lord said unto the brother of Jared, Thou shalt make a hole in the top, and also in the bottom. And when thou shalt suffer for air, thou shalt unstop the hole, and receive air. And if it be so that the water come in upon thee, behold, ye shall stop the hole, that ye may not perish in the flood. The Lord knew that the Jaredites would be crossing oceans, and would be experiencing high seas and great waves. When waves pound over the barge, the hull or bottom of the barge would have been completely exposed to flooding, nor could the cabin door have been left open. The Lord's solution seems to have been to place a hatch on the deck of the hull, which could be opened and closed like any modern vessel, and to do the same to the top of the cabin. The verse could be rewritten, "And the Lord said unto the brother of Jared, Thou shalt make a hatch in the cabin, top of the ship, and also in the deck, the bottom of the ship, and when thou shalt suffer for air, thou shalt unstop the hole and receive air. Wilt thou suffer that we shall cross this great water in darkness?" Once again, we see the brother of Jared seeking the Lord's help in obtaining light for his ships. We know that the solution came in the faith-promoting miracle of the 16 stones. "Ye shall be as a whale in the midst of the sea, for the mountain waves shall dash upon you. Nevertheless, I will bring you up again out of the depths of the sea for the winds." Anyone who has sailed in rough seas knows that at times the entire deck of the boat can be covered by crashing waves. As the hull reappears above the water washes back into the sea just as it flows off the back of a whale when it surfaces or breaches the sea. And they were tossed upon the waves of the sea before the wind, and they were many times buried in the depths of the sea because of the mountain waves. Clearly, the Jaredite ships were underwater because of the waves crashing over their small ships, not because they traveled underwater or submerged under the surface of the ocean. And it came to pass that when they were buried in the deep, there was no water that could hurt them, their vessels being tight like unto a dish, and also they were tight like unto the ark of Noah. The words we shared today from the Book of Mormon are among hundreds of other examples that document the accuracy of Joseph Smith's translation of the Book of Mormon. For example, Noah's ship was covered with pitch or bitumen, both inside and out. The Jaredites did the same. How could the prophet Joseph Smith have known that in Mesopotamia and Arabia there are naturally occurring deposits of pitch, that is, of petroleum, that flows to the earth's surface? Even more impressive is that the Book of Mormon's detailed description of Mesopotamian ocean-going vessels is exact in every detail. Discover more about the Book of Mormon through science and exploration by subscribing to this channel, or you can visit our website, christinperu.com. At our website, you can receive information about our annual Book of Mormon tours to Peru, where I will be your guide. Thank you.